This is DW Garage Project, and I'm Corey Brooks. I own the website dwgagepanels.com, and I like to call it Dashworks. I named it Dashworks because it works with what I'm doing, mostly gauge panels for the dashboard, and you know, it's kind of catchy. But it also works with a garage project. Gauge panels, garage project, DWGP. Anyways, the chassis is fully coated. Satin black with KBS. I see you. What's going on, everybody? This is the DW Garage Project, and it's been a couple of months since I've last made a video. Basically, on this video, I got the cab on the bed and the bed on the floor. Here's the chassis, just about stripped clean of everything. I still need to get the rest of the front suspension off. Here's those lower brace bars that I've made up. I know there's another channel that's doing something similar, but this one is modeled closely after a drag racer that I know. So I was going after lightweight and not heavy duty. The rear axle's off. I got the back somewhat sandblasted and didn't go too crazy with it. It was mostly the front that I went crazy on because of all the orange paint that was on it. So basically, let's get the front suspension off. And once the front suspension off, I'm gonna wheel it outside and I'm gonna start degreasing it. All right, we're getting somewhere. Wasn't too bad. trying a new thing where I have a stationary camera and then I have the camera that I used to film with, because that's what it's for. It's a pocket camera. I figured with the gimbal that it has on there, it'd be best for using it for the handheld. And then I got a DJI Action 3 for the tripod camera. So, yeah. Now I can start degreasing it. I forget what these were for. Were they top or bottom? Well, there it is. It's all degreased up. They pretty much give you enough where you can fill up a spray bottle 2 times, 50-50 ratio. That's what I did. Don't know if that's the perfect ratio, but a 50-50 seemed to work pretty damn good to me. I mean, I power washed this before I degreased it, and I was amazed to see how much more dirt was coming off of it after I degreased it. So yeah, that was something else. It even seemed to get some of this yellow paint off, because there was some more yellow paint in here, and the degreaser pretty much just ate that off. So yeah, that was a surprise. So now the next step is hitting it with the rust cutter. I guess it's like their converter. So let's get to it. This is the rust converter. Now it says, don't let it dry and keep it wet for 30 minutes. Don't know how well that's going to work out, but I'm not super concerned about the rust. I think I can spray this on, let it do its thing. Even if it dries a little bit, what's the worst that can happen? It's better than using this than none at all. That's the way I'm going with it. Don't do what I do. Alright, well, I just went around it a couple times with the rust converter, trying to keep it as wet as I can. So basically on anything that's super light or rust free, it'll make it a very bright silver. Like all that very minor surface rust that I was having that made it look orange, it's completely bright metal now. The back half, where I didn't really focus too much on the sandblasting, where there's still a lot of the original paint, does nothing for that. Doesn't really do too much for the heavy rust that I didn't get. But the KBS will adhere to rust if it's prepped properly, so it's not loose. I went over it with a wire wheel, so it'll hold up. But yeah, seems to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now I just gotta power blast it off and let it dry. Alright, well, now it's inside the shop. It's nice and dry, and I'm gonna start mixing up the chassis coating. Alright, well, I got some good news and bad news. The good news is the gun lays it down really nice. When that dries, it should be really nice and smooth. The bad news is it's only one coverage. It's only one coat, and I didn't even get the finish. The can says there's enough to coat one chassis 2 times, and I don't believe that using an HVLP gun makes it that much less efficient. I mean, there's a little bit on the ground, and I didn't really see too much in the air because that stuff flowed out really thick. There's no way that you can paint one chassis with just 1 quart can. It'd be best to get 3 quart cans, like 3 cans at 1 quart to do a chassis with. All the other stuff was able to work a chassis with 1 shot, and I still have some left over. But as far as the coating goes, if you want 2 coats of that, you're going to need at least 3 of those 1 quart cans to do a chassis like this. There's some spots that the air gun can't get to, the HVLP gun, and I'm going to go back and brush it later. But as far as the finish goes, I mean, it's looking really good for 1 coat. I think it'll be even smoother if I do 2 coats. And I didn't thin it because it says it usually doesn't need to be thinned, but when I sprayed it on, it came out kind of thick. So the next time I'm gonna thin it out, and it'll probably flow just a little bit better, because any texture you see is practically how it's spattered out of the HVLP gun. Well, it's a week later and payday's tomorrow. I'm gonna get some more chassis coating to finish that up, but for now I'm gonna clean up this rear axle and get it ready so I can coat this too, because I think I'm gonna be stuck with this axle for a little while before I can upgrade to a more pricey axle. Yeah, I don't understand people sometimes. It looks like they painted that yellow on top of grease. So as I'm wearing it down, okay, yeah, that just happened. So as I'm wearing it down with my wire wheel, the yellow disappears, and then I'm still taking down like 1/8 of an inch of grease underneath of it. Some people, I swear. Alright, well, here it is. It's cleaned up to the best that I can get it this round. I'll probably do a little bit more next time. So I was reusing the sand that I had the past couple of rounds of dustless sandblasting that I was doing. The problem with it is when you collect it off the ground and reuse it, a lot of it has already been spent. It's been crushed, turned into dust, and then you pick up debris like old orange paint flakes or little pebbles. So what happening is I kept getting those paint flakes and those little pebbles are plugging up my my little sandblaster right here, and I kept having to take it apart over and over just to get the sand to flow again. But even still, with the annoyance, it does pretty good with getting some of the heavy shit off. So I'll try again the next round, and this will be coated with KBS along with the rest of the chassis over here. And the transmission, I blasted that one last weekend when I still had some decent sand left. So can't wait to get all that done.
3 weeks later.
Guess a little demonstration on how tough this KBS is. The VIN on a Dodge pickup is right here on the chassis. You got the front axle, rear axle. They're on the passenger side just after the transmission crossmember, and that coating went on a little bit thick and it's kind of obscuring the VIN number, so I'm trying to wire wheel it off, and this is how tough it is. That's still coating, that's not metal. Now that's metal. Took a while. That took me about 3 or 4 minutes to get it all cleaned up. So I wish they would have stamped it heavier at the factory. But yeah, it's as good as it's gonna get. I don't have stamps myself to re-stamp it. But it should look a lot better with the thinned out KBS coating when I spray it again. Well, I got it degreased, so I'm ready to start shooting again. Just letting some of the water dry off a little bit before I do. Smoothed it up a little bit right here because it got really lumpy. Both sides have been shaved where the old bump stop stuff was. And currently doing the rust converter on this axle. Trying to decide if I want to cut these brackets off, weld some new ones on the other side for an axle flip kit, or get one of those bolt-on axle flip kits, because I think I have one. And there we have it, one fully coated chassis. After the second round using the 1.4 tip instead of the 1.9 tip and thinning it out slightly, it flowed a lot smoother, came out a little easier, and I felt like I wasn't wasting as much. So I made sure I got the front of the chassis as smooth as I can. A little bit of overspray on the rear, but that's all going to be covered, so I'm not concerned about it. The rear was coated a couple weeks ago, and there's that. The gun that they got works pretty good if you want to do chassis coating. You don't need anything fancy. Cleans up pretty decently. It'll probably be pretty good for doing epoxy primers and stuff like that. But when I do paint and body on here, I'm going to use a more expensive gun, some a little bit with more control. Okay, so let's catch you up to where I am since the last video. This is how everything is sitting. Engine's tucked away. Everything's pretty much just stacked into the bed of the truck. All the front suspension is out. And I have some ideas for the front suspension that may involve some Mustang 2 components with Corvette brakes. And this is going to be interesting. Still got to work up some funds to get my firewall idea going. But all that's pretty much last. The main focus was just getting the chassis coated. de-rusting the rear axle, showing off the gun. Transmission's been completely blasted on the outside, so it's nice and clean. Now that the chassis is coated, I'm going to focus on getting this transmission rebuilt. Basically, the goodies from CRT transmission. I try not to work on my truck when there's more than one truck in the rack on weekdays, because I don't want to have to pull a bunch of cars out in the parking lot, because people like to drive by. Are you open? No, we're not open. You sure? So on the next set of episodes, it's going to be rebuilding the transmission. And once the transmission's rebuilt, I can mate it up to the engine, stick it into the chassis, and then I can start doing the plumbing, like fuel lines, brake lines, vapor lines. I want to get the exhaust built up since the chassis will be bare. Once all that's finished, I can start working on the cab. I might have a lead on a new bed, but I'm waiting to see, because I don't want to use this bed. It's a little messed up on the right rear. It wasn't an accident once, I guess. I saw some twisting on the chassis in the rear, but I fixed that up and welded it before I coated it. So for the most part, the chassis is completely straight. There was one little small spot that I couldn't get. This little blip right here, it was worse. I straightened it out somewhat, but that's as good as it was going to get with the tools I had at the moment. No one's really going to pay too much attention to that. Wait, who's going to crawl under my truck and be like, oh, you got a bent chassis? No, it's a 50-year-old chassis. I mean, this is better than most out there that I've seen. I've seen a lot of chassis that are just completely destroyed, and this one barely had any rust on it, so I'm grateful for that. Rear axle, I use a lot of rust cutter on there. That's where all that white stuff is. I'm not going to keep this axle for long. I think I'm just going to do the axle flip kit where I weld the perches on the bottom. It does have 355 gears, and it does have a sure grip locker in it, or limited slip, whatever that is. And I'm going to run it while I'm breaking in the engine, the transmission, and all that. And I probably won't take it to the drag strip until I get like a 9-inch or Ford 8.8 or something like that. Those 8 3/4 are hard to come by, and when they come by, they're too expensive. So I'm not exactly a Mopar purist. I try to keep as much Mopar as I possibly can, but you know, there's not a lot of options for front suspension on these trucks, and I found something that might work. It's gonna involve Mustang 2 components and Corvette brakes, so this is gonna be interesting. I found a detail on ball joints that makes things really interesting, that's for sure. We'll just get some new leaf springs so I don't have to worry about painting those. They're cheap enough. And I really can't wait to start tearing into this cab. I think once people start seeing the progress that I'm making on this truck, I think my videos will hit off, because the first 5 or 6 episodes that I've done, basically it was just me tearing stuff down. I'm not explaining a lot. I mean, it's just a teardown video. Who cares? Everybody's done a teardown video. There's not much to it. But when I start building up, I'm going to start going into a lot more detail, because I'm doing some unique things. It's probably not the most unique D100 build, but it's going to be one of the more unique ones, since I make a lot of my own parts, and I'm experimenting with making some replacement parts, some beauty panels, stuff like that. My door panel idea, where I do the inner door panels, I have an idea for that. The firewall, of course. I got some beauty plates for the radiator support. Speaking of the radiator support, I need to do some serious work on this thing, because it's pretty rotten. Rotting away. I think I'll get some 2x2 square tubing and replace a lot of that. The radiator brackets, those will get cut out. It's basically just going to be flat, because I have an aftermarket radiator. Come to find out that the 66 to 67 Chevy Chevelle radiators, if you get something aftermarket like from Champion Radiator, they fit in there just fine. You just gotta make yourself 2 new holes. But the radiator hoses and the bottom and the top, they're in the same places as the Dodge, so it works. Get the seat reupholstered. Back glass is fine. Find me another one of these because it got weathered, or I can keep it just as it is. Lots of fun. Oh, I really can't wait to hear this thing up. I built this engine back in 2020. It is a small block 360 out of a 91 or a 92 Dodge D250. So it's a roller block, but I took all the roller stuff out. I put a Comp Cams Extreme Energy 284H in there. It's a 510, 513 lift, I think, and 284 intake, 296 exhaust at 50. Or no, that's not at 50, that's at total. I think 242 is at 50 on the intake. So yeah, this is gonna be a lumpy engine. But I'm not too sure because I'm not gonna run a carburetor. I'm gonna use Ace's EFI, and I'm not sure how much that's gonna tame the lumpy idle out of it. I need to get the, was it CFV or CVF? They make nice accessory drives. So I'm gonna get the serpentine pulleys with the alternator bracket, the power steering bracket, and all that. These headers were for the 94 to 2001 Dodge Ram 1500, and I modified the cab a little bit and modified the chassis a little bit for these to fit. I heated up one side with a torch, bent them in so they get a little bit closer to the block, because this side was close to the block and this side was jutting way out, so I had to do that. I'm gonna have them sandblasted and ceramic coated. I'm gonna put some V-band flanges on there before that. I'm gonna run some aftermarket metal core catalysts, because those high flow catalysts, they really don't affect the performance whatsoever. And if they do, if anything, it's like 1 horsepower. I ain't worried about it. So yeah, lots of fun.